All right, let's get started. So this first passage was about a novel written by some guy. I do not remember the name of the guy. It was about this novel, Hannibal. Author analyzes the novel, uh, kind of praises it, and he tells us that the character description of the protagonist of this novel is fascinating. Though the protagonist is an evil character, but people, the readers will find them fascinated to the character. All right. Just a second, guys. Some settings need to be changed. Please do not doodle on screens, guys. Okay. All right. So this was a passage all about an analysis of the novel Hannibal. Question number one: why does the writer think that the title of the novel Hannibal works? Okay. What are your answers? All right. We're getting some A's and some C's. Okay, let's see. Option A says the title aptly captures the most important aspect of the book. Nowhere in the passage does the author mention that uh, the name of the novel is the most important aspect of the book. Not really. So it is an extreme answer choice. Option B says the author's writing style embodies characteristics of the Hannibal's personality. Now, here he says the novel's title works not only because it is about Hannibal, it is Hannibal, he says. And though the narration is in the third person, it speaks with his voice. We'll have to understand this idea here. We'll have to understand this sentence in particular. So the reason why the title of the novel works, the author tells us, is that narration is in the third person, but it is in the voice of Hannibal, the protagonist, which means author has narrated the story in such a way that it appears, it seems that the story is coming directly from the protagonist, that is Hannibal, the evil character, which means the author's writing style embodies the characteristics of Hannibal's personality. B should be the correct answer. What about C now? The author's narrative is through the eyes of the protagonist, may be correct, and leaves a moralistic judgment to the reader. This is not a reason, though this is factually true. It is stated somewhere here. It is up to us to decide the right or the wrongness of the things. But this is not cited as one of the reasons why title is appropriate. So the second part of option C, though factually correct, factually true, it is not a reason why the title of the novel Hannibal works. Morality issue was never part of the title. Okay, therefore this is not a reason. Does not answer the question. Correct answer B. Question number two: which of the following is admitted by the author in the passage? Okay, what does he admit? What are your answers? What are your responses? What do you think? We have some B's. Okay. Option A says Hannibal's actions are morally wrong. All right. It is explicitly written here. Author admits that Hannibal doings are wrong. So Hannibal's actions are morally wrong. Yes. Clearly admitted by the author. Clearly admitted by the author. Option B, Anthony Hopkins' portrayal of Hannibal increased the popularity of the series. Okay, maybe. This part is correct. And it compelled the author to write another book. No, 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 no. It might have inspired the author to write another book, a sequel, but it did not compel the author to write another book. And therefore, the usage of the word compel here is problematic. This is again factually incorrect. We only know that when this character Hannibal was brought to life by Anthony Hopkins in 91 film, we became hooked. All right. Now, a character with intellectual superiority, C says, and old world manners can be fascinating, even if evil. Tempting choice. Author does mention something along these lines here. He says, uh, this character Hannibal charmed us, hypnotized us with his combination of verbal gymnastics, old world manners, and awesome intellectual abilities. So that part sounds correct. But he also mentions in the same sentence, rarely before had we been drawn to such an evil character. So this was probably the first time. This was unprecedented. Now, a character with intellectual superiority and old world manners. These are two qualities, quality one, quality two. Can be fascinating. We can't say that. Why? Because the passage mentions he charms us with three qualities: verbal gymnastics, old world manners, and awesome intellectual abilities. So it is actually a combination of three rather than two qualities which can be fascinating. We can't say whether two of them can be equally fascinating. So that's the trick here. Okay. Option D says peeping into the mind of Hannibal makes the novel a much more interesting read than the silence of the. Such a comparison that this sequel Hannibal is more interesting than the prequel Silence of the Lambs has never been made. So this part is alien to the passage. Ishwank, we don't have to say that it is morally wrong. The question says, which of the following is admitted by the author in the passage? Author says Hannibal doings are wrong. So he admits that his actions are morally wrong. From the moral standpoint. Right. Which of the following can be inferred from the passage? Okay. Your bets. What can be inferred from the passage? Okay. We have a B. We have a D. We have more B's. Okay. Let's see. Option A says the fact that readers find a dangerous character like Hannibal fascinating reveals that morality is no longer popular with people. This part is alien. Harris had revealed enough fascinating details about Hannibal's past in the earlier novels prior to warrant a third book on the same character. Where does this part come from? Hannibal's love for the finer things in life makes him a fascinating character. Now, it was written here Hannibal loves the finer things in life. He loves classical music, ancient literature, fine art, etc. And author mentions all this while explaining why we find him fascinating. So in this paragraph, author says we find him fascinating sympathetic and a likable character. And why do we find him a likable character? Author says, I like the well-rounded character that Harris has created. So well-rounded. He's somewhat outlandish, flamboyant, deeply disturbed, but he has a love for finer things. So these are all the reasons why he becomes a fascinating or likable character. So guys, you'll have to understand the thought flow here. Just a bit of thought flow and you will be safely home. Correct answer C. It can be inferred that Hannibal's love for the finer things is one of the reasons which makes him a fascinating character. Now B, where does B come from? It's alien. Not mentioned that second book or third book ka kya, what is the relationship between the second and third book? It is not mentioned anywhere. Okay. So this was the first passage. I would say easy, easy, easy. A 3-on-3 type of passage. Passage 2. Well, this passage was a straight, simple read. Author discusses the rise and fall of this organization called WTUL, Women's Trade Union League, the rise of the union, the obstacles, challenges faced by it, uh, the accomplishments, achievements made by the union, and eventually the death of the union. So this was basically a historical mapping of the union. So the primary purpose of this passage is what? Okay. Option A says describe the barriers confronting women in the contemporary workplace. Author is not discussing the barriers confronting women, rather he discusses WTUL to call readers' attention to an overlooked contributor to American history. Now, this overlooked contributor to American history could refer to WTUL. So, does the author call our attention to the overlooked contributor to WTUL? Yes, he does. Now, what if I have to verify is whether the author calls this particular contributor, this particular organization overlooked. Have people not paid enough attention? Have they paid scant attention to this organization? And here he says, WTUL made a contribution far greater than did most historical footnotes suggest. So historical footnotes have not done justice to it. Also, he also calls the organization nearly forgotten, which means, yes, it has not been given its due share of attention or credit, which means authors' primary purpose is to call readers' attention to this organization, WTUL, which has contributed to American history. To critique the methods employed by an important labor union, author does not really focus on the methods used by this organization. Rather, he focuses on the achievements, the challenges faced by this organization, the importance of this organization in American history. Now, D is too extreme to suggest that the primary purpose is to rebuke historians. Uh, you know, is a bit too much to say. Is not the primary purpose is not to scold historians or to criticize historians. It is to highlight the importance of WTUL. Also, it is not women's labor movement that historians fail to cover. It is the importance of WTUL, this organization, that they fail to cover. So we'll have to keep that thing in mind as well. Okay. Which of the following best characterizes the American Federation of Labor's view of a women's trade union league as it is presented in the passage? Okay, let's see. Now, D is the correct answer because it was written here. Because the AFL's power stemmed from its highly skilled labor force, The organization saw little economic benefit in working with the WTUL. So there was some political capital, but a little economic benefit that could be extracted out of WTUL. D best paraphrases that idea. All right. Each of the following is cited in the passage as an accomplishment of WTUL except. All right. So what were the accomplishments? We have some A's coming in, which is, by the way, the correct answer. It eventually organized a highly skilled labor force, workforce. This idea is alien to the passage. Can we verify BCD? Can we verify BCD? Let's see. Just a second, guys. Okay. So number 6, it eventually organized a highly skilled workforce to increase its bargaining power. Is clearly an alien idea. It contributed to the development of a group of leaders in America. Is it written anywhere? Let's see. Here, the organization also offered a political base for all reform-minded women and thus helped to develop the next generation of American leaders. So it contributed to the development of a group of leaders of in America. It is written. It provided essential support to striking women. Is it written? Yes. It established strike funds and soup kitchens to support striking unionists. So it provided essential support to striking women. It helped fund startup unions for women. It provided seed money to women who organized workers in specific plants and industries. So seed fund is the fund needed to start up. So D is also mentioned. Correct answer for sixth is A. Yes, Shreya. You'll also get the recording for the first 4 or 5 questions. You can check the reasoning then. I'll post it on YouTube. All right. Now, the third passage was about the importance of strategic planning. Author first tries to point out the problems associated with the same. So he essentially says, uh, implementation, though managers make good plans, they may make good plans at the implementation stage. There are chances that the plan would not work. And then in the second paragraph, he takes a turn and he says, however, if planning is more practical, experiential than theoretical fancy, there are chances that it might work. And then he goes on to share some data, some statistics to prove his point that planning can work if it is done correctly in the right way. Okay. Uh, Monish, never mind. Let's catch up from here. Uh, I'll also upload video on YouTube so you can check the first 4 or 5 answers, the reasoning behind them as well when I do the same. Okay. All right. The primary purpose of the passage is to do what? All right. So we have some A's and some B's coming in. Let's see. To refute the idea that change is bad for a corporation's long-term health, where does the passage at all talk about change? It talks about strategic planning. The subject of discussion is strategic planning rather than change. So clearly out to describe how long-term planning, despite some potential problems, pitfalls, can help a corporation to grow. Absolutely. This was the author's stance, statement, or topic sentence. To compare and contrast two styles of planning, author does not specify or identify two styles of planning. He talked generally about strategic planning and did not identify any specific types of it. Okay. So alien, evaluate the strategic planning goals of corporate America today. The focal point is not goals, but whether or not strategic planning is effective. So it can be inferred from the passage that in general, strategic planning during the 1980s had all of the following shortcomings, except, okay, let's see. Is it mentioned that it relied on outside consultants who did not necessarily understand the nuts and bolts of the business? Yes, it is mentioned. It was a top-down process involving only a few top corporate officers and hired guns. All right. Number crunching experts came into a company, so outside consultants were hired. A dependence on theoretical models. It was written here, grand theories that did not always perfectly describe the ground situation, correct? An inherent weakness in company's own ability to implement the strategies. Now, this is not mentioned, that company was inherently unable to implement the strategies. So C should be the answer. An excess of information. Tome-like volumes filled with abstruse facts. Yes, therefore, there was an excess of information and data. All right. The author most likely mentions the results of the survey of 1,000 companies in order to do what? Clearly, he has mentioned the results of 1,000 companies to support his point that if done right, strategic planning can be helpful, which means D should be the obvious answer. Easy question. Absolutely correct, guys. Absolutely correct. Okay. Which brings us to passage 4. The passage tells us about this philosopher of science called named Deborah Mayo. And she believed that a scientific theory is valid only if it can be verified or validated through severe, strict testing. And a severe test would be one which does not have a wide margin of error, which would, a severe test would be one through which only this particular theory will pass, while the other alternative theories would not pass. Such a theory would be, such a test would be called a severe test. So that's what the passage is all about. Author gives us some example to prove this point. Which of the following conclusion can be drawn from the passage? Okay. Option A says precise measurement is a sufficient condition to ensure validity. No. Read this line. A claim can only be said to be supported by experiment if the various ways in which the claim could be faulty have been investigated and eliminated. Could only be said implies it is not a sufficient condition, it is a necessary condition. So not just a sufficient condition, it is at least a necessary condition. Experimental data might support multiple theoretical explanations same time. Hence, validity of theories needs to be tested further. Not always. If testing is airtight, if it is severe, that is not bound to happen. Precise measurement is both a necessary and sufficient condition to ensure validity of conclusions. Absolutely correct. That's what this line says. Precise measurement along with experimenters' knowledge of the theory. Now, experimenters' knowledge of the theory was not a variable. Also, even this answer choice mentions only as sufficient condition. Experimental data might support multiple theoretical explanations same time, hence validity of the theory needs to be tested further. So, Vedansh, it should have said when experimental data supports multiple theoretical explanations, validity of theories needs to be tested further. But the phrasing of answer choice B makes it seem that this is the case always. No experimental data. It's a fact statement. Experimental data might support multiple theoretical explanations and hence the validity of the theory needs to be tested further. As if this is the only case possible. Also, the focus is not on more testing. The focus is on precise or severe or airtight testing. Mind that. As per Mayo's perspective, which of the following best defines the phrase scientific explanation? One which is most detailed. Mayo does not talk of comprehensive explanation. One which survives examinations better than other explanations. Yes, it should compete with other explanations and survive experimentation. So P could be the answer. One which has been thoroughly tested by scientific experts, not by experts, by experiments, not necessarily experts. One which refutes other explanations convincingly. Nice. This could also be the answer. So B and D. Now, B talks of examinations, that is experimentation, but D does not talk of experimentation at all. And Mayo's philosophy is that a scientific explanation is one which survives rigorous experimentation, accurate experimentation. So B should be the answer and not D. Author's use of Snell's law of refraction can be said to serve what purpose? Okay. Now clearly Snell's law of refraction was an example to prove the main point. Therefore, was it premeditated? No. It is superfluous, means extra, not required, peripheral? No. Contrived means fabricated. It's not a fabricated example. This sounds like an actual scientific theory. Is it illustrative? That is, serves the purpose of an example? Yes, absolutely. So D should be the correct answer. Easy question. Brings us to some critical reasoning questions here. Now, number 13, let's understand the argument first. This guy, Harrison Pope, says dissociative amnesia did not occur. It did not exist in the past, or else historical documents, historical records would document it. So what is he assuming? Now he's assuming that Historical records are accurate. Historical records are accurate in identifying mental illnesses, which means A should be the answer. The author is assuming that the written works throughout history would accurately record representative samples of psychological abnormalities. That's a paraphrase for what we already thought of. B is a fact and not an assumption. It is already stated as a fact in the passage. C talks of causes and cures. Nothing in the argument takes us there. So this is alien, goes far beyond. Dissociative amnesia has so far been assumed to be a recent psychological phenomena. This is exactly okay. Though author opposes this or refutes this idea, but he has not mentioned that so far it has been assumed to be a recent psychological phenomena. He has only put this dissociative amnesia to the test of time. When did it start? So his research concentrates on identifying the timeline of the disease, not to refute, not to directly challenge any assumptions or preconceived notions about the disease. Okay, number 14. London has been called the smoke, and the reasons are traffic congestion and poor rubbish collection or waste disposal uh, systems. Now the question says we have to undermine this argument. To undermine this argument, we'll have to prove that traffic congestion and rubbish collection are not the reasons behind air pollution. Clearly, D does that. Pollution levels in London are high not because of traffic and waste disposal systems, but because of something else, polluting industry. So another cause has been identified. Number 15. So basically it says alcohol is available across the counter, does not require any license. So alcoholism is becoming a major problem in India. That's the main core argument. In order to weaken this conclusion, we'll have to prove that alcoholism is not becoming a major problem because it is available over the counter. Let's see. If D is correct, which means only a specific section of society has been surveyed, it clearly points to biased sample. If sampling of a survey is biased, the survey is challenged or the survey results are weakened automatically. If selectively a sample is chosen and the selection is not random, the sample is biased, we can easily say that the conclusion uh, drawn by that survey is fallacious, flawed at best. Okay. Brings us to much loved, our beloved verbal ability. All right. Historians of the deep human past generally consider cooking to be a recent activity. Seems like an opening sentence or intro. Okay. This is a fantastically weird way of looking at evolutionary change. This is a weird way. So we are looking for a weird way before this sentence. By contrast, Richard thinks we were cooking 1.8 million years ago. So this idea clearly contrasts the idea in A. Let's see. According to him, this him must refer to Richard Guy. A significant number of hearths have been unearthed around 760,000 year mark, and there is diminishing archaeological evidence of controlled fire the further back you go. Assumption is that once we became modern, we learned how to cook, we worked out how to cook. Okay, this idea is actually explanation or further elaboration of sentence A, that historians generally believe that cooking is a recent activity. The same idea is presented in E, which means AE is a concrete pair, and that should be my opening. C now draws a contrast. By contrast, Richard thinks that we were cooking 1.8 million years ago. So it's not a modern activity really. So AEC forms a triplet. D explains Richard's opinion, and then B is author's opinion about Richard's opinion. This is author calls his way of thinking fantastically weird way of thinking. So AECDB should be the correct answer. Did anyone get it right, guys? Was a 5-sentence parajumble. Good job, Vedansh. Number 17. The earliest traces of people on the Isle of Man can be found as far back as Mesolithic period. Okay. Again, seems to be an intro. They use the small tools. They, who is this they? We don't know. Representatives of these artifacts. Now, these artifacts refers to small tools made of flint or bone. So BC must be a mandatory pair. Uh, it could be a possible, but let's look at other sentences first. It's a possibility. Let's not call it a mandatory pair for now. D says these have been found near the coast. Again, these refers to the tools made of flint or bone. They have been found near the coast, which means it should not be BC. It should actually be BDC, a mandatory triplet. The first residents lived in small natural shelters. Now, clearly, E elaborates the idea in A. So AE is a concrete pair, which means AEBDC is the correct answer. Did anyone get it right? Good job, Keshav. Good job, Vedansh. Excellent. All right. I hope you also got the reasoning right. Huh? That is also important. All right. Next is Nature's unpublished writings often reveal his more tentative and speculative ideas. Fine. Disagreement regarding Nature's notebooks centers around the degree of interpretive priority which ought to be given to the unpublished versus the published manuscripts. Seems to be a new idea. First one sounded like an intro. This material is surrounded by controversy. This material. Surrounded by controversy, however, since some of it conflicts with the views he expresses in his published works. Okay. So this material must refer to the unpublished works, which makes AC a mandatory pair, concrete pair. So far, so good. The proponents of this school of thought, which means one school of thought must be presented before this sentence, which is E, one popular approach opines that. This is the opinion of one set of people. So ED must be a mandatory pair, concrete pair, B clearly sets the context for discussion, the main context for discussion. ACB, ED is the answer. Wonderful, guys. Good job with this one. Okay, identify the odd one out. This was a simple question. D tells me that both the swift runners and slow runners take roughly the same time when airborne. So it is not when they're airborne that the difference in speed, really results. It is when they land. What faster runners do better is apply a more powerful force to the ground through their foot. So they have a briefer contact period. Now B is odd one out. In a sense, it is opposite to the idea being talked about in other sentences, because it says that the swiftest runners achieve top speed by swinging their legs more rapidly when airborne between takeoff and landing. So it contradicts the idea in D. D said when they're airborne, their speeds are the same and their strategy, their technique is more or less the same, right? All right, number 20. All other sentences talk about how technology has led to cultural nationalism, how information-rich societies want to study in their language and create unique selling points. But C talks about corruption and political sclerosis and austerity, altogether a new idea, which is forcing Catalonia to fight for self-determination. So the reason is not technology per se. Reasons are corruption, austerity, and political sclerosis. While in other countries, self-determination, the idea of self-determination is springing because of the advent of technology. So C is clearly out. All right, guys. So this was KitCAT 1, an ideal score. Vedansh, I'm just posting it on YouTube. You can check the first 5, 6 from there. The ideal score for this particular exercise should be, in terms of rightly answered questions, it should be 15 out of 20. Should be a good score. Guys, that is it. See you next time. Bye-bye.